Now let's escalate even more. So this is quite a simple structural expansion. This is one of our most basic. So if we just add like a slightly different movement on, let's say we're going to do this kind of hit down like this that I've talked about before, that you see it in karate like that, and you do see it in, do you though? I can't think of a Shaolin form with that in, but nevertheless, I talked before about how if the karate version is like this, and this is like our idea of storing force, like there's force stored here, and then release force. Now there's no force stored here, whereas in Yiquan we don't go forward like that, we don't use closing with the hips going together, we would usually use opening like that. And how we think about structural expansion with closing is something to look at another time, by the way. We'll usually use this way, opening, so they go back like that with and we keep the body rounded. And remember, this is our idea of storing force. That from here the force is dead. You've got to move the arm back to get into another posture. Move it back to a place where force is stored. And look, when the arm's like this, force is stored because it's round. And that's exactly the same idea. Like when we do that, force is stored because it's round. It's the same principle. Force is stored, and we can just change into another. Like, it doesn't matter what. We can change into another. I mean, we can like that, you know, by using some slightly different principles, but it's a bigger movement and it's a more awkward movement. So I think I talked about, like, if we wanted to do that kind of posture like that, where we hit him with other postures, if you like part of the idea is that this is completely square force. So if you wanted to continue using square force and you want to punch forwards, you'd have to pull back like that, because it's very hard to get power like that. Whereas this way you can just punch straight in, like. So it contains force, it stores force all the time in the rounded, straight but not straight movements. It's part of the genius of each one. And one of the key things that creates this stored force posture is curtailment or truncation of the movement. It doesn't matter which terms you use, it's the concept that they get at idiomatically. We mostly need to understand it physically as physical knowledge. It doesn't really matter what terms we use. Just matters in terms of teaching that I confuse people by using different terms. I know that. By truncating every part of the movement into this kind of twisted metal way of moving in each one, which we'll also look again at when we look at some of the stuff that comes from white crane. Bit of white crane there for you. It's from my Hungar crane. Truncation is how we get that twisted storing force movement. But this is still postural expansion or structural expansion. Again, you can use either term, it doesn't matter. Postural expansion is the same thing as this. The only thing that's different, of course, is the arm is going down here, but that also helps to get a bit more force on it because it's a bigger movement, and it gets more twisting force on it. There's just a little bit more of this movement on the posture. This is what we use. This exactly the same thing that it's used for in karate, like just blocking a kick or something like that, and everyone says like, well, that's too low, or it could be someone goes for a takedown or something like that. I know this is not like the effective takedown defense that you will learn in MMA or something like that, but just as like a panic movement where someone who's really not very good at it really gets it wrong and you just hit them in the side of the head with a hammer fist or something like that. And it's used in knife as well, but it's a whole other story. We don't promote knife, even though we've got like an advanced knife curriculum, we don't show it, we don't promote it. But just hitting down like that, doesn't even matter what the target is actually, because this is from the natural set of each one movements, that they have no particular target. That's what differentiates the natural set in many ways from the cultural sets. The natural sets are just big limb movements. It doesn't really matter what the target is, they're not designed for a specific task. They're just things that the body does when it releases force and sticks a limb out. So it's from the natural set. But we can think of something like someone who just goes for a kick and they're not a great kicker, and we just don't and we just hit it, change it. We'll do like an overhand or something like that. So we'll do it like we talked about moving. We'll change it like that. And again, you can see, like, well, you might not be able to see it, but I felt it straight away in those last two examples. The first one I did chain Farley, I did 1, 2, and then in the second one I did compound using my somatic timing. So yeah, you can say the first one, like, it has the basis of somatic timing, just like Xing Yiquan, you hit and the muscle relaxes. But when you do it faster, on the muscle relax, you go straight into the next one. So let's see, can you tell which one I'm doing? You know, when you break it down like that, you can see straight away. The faster one is the somatic timing, obviously. But they've got to get this feeling of postural expansion. And when Wang Shengzai says the posture on the left, the strike on the left begins on the right, you start seeing it now, how it all links together. Like, when you expand, but you don't just expand, you use twisting, you use screwing force into the posture. Look at this. It's just this kind of Shaolin. And this is because the natural set, if you look at the pictures on the walls of Shaolin Temple, that's very much the natural set in each one. Just these big movements, like just big limb movements with release of force. That's what that posture is in Shaolin Chuan. It's just that. Only this other, like in Shaolin Chuan, or it can be that way with the see it like that, or you can sometimes see it like that, but that's the proper way, like that, with the edge of the arm out, not twist round to reveal the underside of the arm. We've talked about that idea before when we talked about uppercuts, keeping the edge out. So we're kind of reviewing everything that we've looked at so far, which is good, seeing how it all links together. So and my intent is it's also using down, so open, close, up and down. So just this drop of the using the Wang Shengzai call it he calls it something about the weight of the earth or something like that. The gravity, energy of the earth's core or something like that, where it's talking about gravity. Down, it's down, it's that posture of down. So just that also, what that does is adds some mass into the movement just to generate. And then the art of the configuration is to combine all of that together to set it. It's setting from the back foot much more from the first foot. It's setting from the back foot much more than from the first foot. See, things change when you do them with more power. That also is one of the reasons why it's very dangerous when each one people just do stuff light all the time. Everything changes when you do it with more power. And this is part of this structural expansion as well, like that we use there. Or maybe it's just like this very interesting thing that happens with your intention, that if you're thinking about a particular paradigm, it feeds into your intent itself, and it starts, like it takes it as like a little bit of an extra code. Like it comes from, if there's task-specific requirements, like you've hurt yourself or something like that, and it's got to make the adaptation in the way that you're moving. Or if there's a rule change, like it's just boxing rather than you can't use your legs and so on, the intent will make those changes also intuitively. It's also part of the art, the profound art of, the core quintessence art of Wushu. But it will, because of that phenomenon, because it can do that, if you're thinking about something like Tai Chi or Bagua or something like that, or indeed boxing, it can affect your movement, it can affect the way that the intent makes those decisions. So that's quite interesting. So because I'm thinking of, that can affect the demonstration, because I'm thinking of fishtail routing and flat routing. But usually, you can do it like this with the, maybe if I was thinking about, now I'm thinking about pivot routing, my intention is changing the posture, but we'll do it with because we're thinking about structural expansion, we drop, and you can see as you drop, your legs go out. So your legs, it's what we call frog's legging, your legs go out a little bit, and that contributes into the structural expansion of the movement. So we should, and we need to use then this other idea that we talked about in kicks, where we explode up, it's far leap from the floor into because this movement into this is otherwise too slow. So we've got to use that explosive movement in the footwork and the stance, just like we would in a kick when it talks about the explosive movement. So you've got to go 1, and then you've got to spring up into the overhand like that, and that's going to look like. Waiting for the kick into that. And again, we're using also, even though we're not necessarily on the pivot route, we can still use a kind of complementary routing, because we're kind of going back like that with the posture, and then we can change forward like that, and that back one goes onto the pivot route and push into the punch like that. Cheers. Right, doesn't matter. Wipe your feet next time, love. Doesn't matter. I'll carry on regardless. Don't, oh, mate. Come on. We can use the complementary routing. It starts from the hips, springs up into the changes, and the weight shifts forward, and we add power into it that way. If you've got magic powers, you don't need to worry about any of this stuff. It's mere structure. To the people who go, someone goes, let's say then we want to use this movement, exactly the same movement, but we want to shrink the size of the movement. So again, this is something that we've kind of mentioned but not really explored yet, that it's one of the ways you can use the infinite curriculum, access the infinite curriculum. We've talked about, well, if I can do a punch with a step forward, can I do a punch with a step back or on the side? And just from one technique, a few ideas around footwork, you can suddenly exponentially expand the amount of things that you know or that you can work with. It's one of the things that's unique in each one. And it's one of the reasons why you don't really need a teacher to tell you that kind of thing. Teacher's the least important part in many cases, in most cases, in all cases. The teacher is the least important part of the overall training process. Again, it's one of the profound contradictions in each one. People who paid a lot of money for a meaningless certificate from China don't want you to know that. But the other way of thinking about how we can access the infinite curriculum is the size of movements, making them bigger and smaller, and short power is one of the ways that we've looked at. So with this posture, we can make it much shorter, like, and again, it doesn't matter what the posture might be for. This is again another. People keep putting these videos out saying, Tai Chi is just wrestling and stuff like that. Again, but this idea that Tai Chi is about techniques, whereas no, it's about core quintessence movement principles. And again, it's Wang Shanzhai trying to get across this core quintessence concepts of Wushu. Techniques are secondary. It's movement principles. So it doesn't even matter what this movement is for. We're training the principles that we can then make task specific intuitively in the moment. So we're making the posture very, well, we're going to hit out this way like this. And then we're going to change into the punch. And remember, we also talked about these movements don't have to be ridiculously powerful. We need to disappoint this expectation that every form of Fa Li is just as powerful as every other form of Fa Li. It doesn't work like that. There's a hierarchy right through to the smallest little movements. Dogs can do Fa Li with their ears and hit flies away and things like that. There's a chain of efficacy and power of these things. So this doesn't have to be super powerful. It just has to be. We just want the somatic flow into the short range, the short power punch. And again, it's like this. You see I've talked about the way that the hips phase with it's not like that, like some people talk about, the body should move as one, like a robot. That's not it. Look, enlighten the people, that's not it. It's phased like that. as the it's not force, it's not energy, it's not chi, it's not even power, it's just the structural movement generating the posture and just the way that it works with the generation of force from the whole body. So let's see what my intent does with the rooting. So it's doing quite a hard set with the back foot, by which I mean my heel's coming up quite far and then just setting back down. That's the rooting that it's fishtailing up like that into almost like a pivot root, but not high enough for that, so we'll just call it a set, and the heel's just going down like that. Yeah. I feel like having an argument with my intent that shouldn't be. It should be a pivot root like that. Let's try both. Go on, mate. So pivot root like that. The problem with the pivot root is, again, it pushes the target forward. So I think my intent is making it. Yeah, that's very interesting. That's a really good example, of engaging consciously the problem and then the intent and what the intent wants to do non-consciously. My intent has just taken the visual, and again, this is a really good example of why visualization and virtual reality concepts are so important in each one. They provide programming for the intent to work on these problems. I've given my intent the idea that someone's very close like that. So if I use a pivot root, it pushes me forward like that. So consciously, I want to use a pivot root because it adds more power. But my intent's well, hold on a minute, you said the opponent was really close. So I'm using a hard set and a flat root. And that's why it's doing it. Yeah, if you do it closer. It's not hard enough for you to hear, but the heel's just coming up off the foot. So I can hear it a bit. Like that. It could just be you're wrestling and you just pull the guard out and just change, and you use this to go into the punch like that. Over there, while you're over like that. Into the. Yeah, I can hear it setting a bit more on the front foot this way. Again, that's the sort of thing you find because we're socially constructed to be left-handed or right-handed, and you won't do it the same both ways because you're more powerful one way than the other, because the programming of the intent can function better one way than the other. That's just, it's damage that's been done to us so early in our lives that we can't shake it. We can, no matter how much standing you do, whatever, you just cannot shake it. You just can't. So certain things, I'm naturally left-handed, so my intent must be thinking it can generate more power this way. So it's setting it on the front foot more for some reason. that only my intent knows why. That's beyond my conscious understanding of why it's doing that differently either way. Again, this is part of the wonderful journey of each one, just finding these little things and then thinking about what does that teach us and what's that connected to and why. And linking it to things like, it's because I'm socially constructed to be left-handed, so for some reason my body can generate power just slightly differently. So it can make a compromise for whatever reason my intent has done that, it can make a compromise. And then that, I love these little diagrams Wang Shenjai did about that represent principles of movement, like circular force being full on one side and empty on the other, or the unity of circular and square force. And he did these little diagrams, one of which I've always got as my logo, and how those are keys. They're keys, first of all, to physical movement, and then they just keep escalating until they become keys to understanding social construction. Just understanding something like, why are we left-handed and right-handed, then opens a whole door into the world of socialization and social control through physical movement. And that then opens the door into thinking about the socially constructed nature of how we perceive reality, and then it escalates into kind of the Tao itself. I just love that from just some principles of movement. When people say, what do these diagrams mean? So let's just say they're a key and leave it at that, pretend it's as simple as that. Yes, well that's what will happen, isn't it? The bin will fall over if you insist on trying to get into it. Eh? It's not, well, it's nearly tea time. It's nearly tea time. Talk about body timing. Your empty tum's the best clock I know. And again, we'll change that. We'll change and we'll do it backwards this way. And again, we can look at if it's very close. These dog prints now. If it's very close, my intent is far more likely to use this flat-footed routing. And if I go out more, it's far more likely to use the pivot route because it just gets more distance and stabilises the posture a bit. If we start doing it with a flat-footed route like that, we start getting more until we start getting like, we just start getting more traditional in the kind of posture that we're doing. So we'll do it close range like that. And this could be anything. Someone could just go for a grab, or they could be going for the, you know, the overhook on the arm or something, and you just release force this way. I mean, it depends on the person, doesn't it? Like how good they are at what they're doing, but it's not the kind of thing you ever see done as the counter. Like, you know, they go for your arm and you just change release force and actually attack the arm that's attacking you, or even if it's on and it's not that tight, someone's got their arm on here, and you pull them like that, or even if it is quite tight and they're a little bit off balance, or you can use compensatory force to, you know, hit him with the clothesline this way, or push, and just make them move from them having hold of you. Quite like that, let's do that. So we'll do like that. We very often, or so far, we've always looked at oppositional force, and that can be very misleading because oppositional force can be in different ways. So instead of like opening like that, using the oppositional force of the arm, if we wanted to push someone as well, like they've got their arm there and we want to push them on the side like that, well then both the arms go in that same direction, and it's not oppositional force, but the oppositional force is between the upper part of the body and the lower part of the body. So the fishtail route out, and then the whole upper body goes that way. And this is what I talked about before. It's a more advanced version of the way that we use the vertical axis. That the bottom half is going that way and the top half is going that way, like that. Right. Push. They put their arm on you. You're wrestling, and like Yao Zhongzong talks about this idea of, he calls it the point, where like just from putting your hand on someone, like in push hands or something like that, you can feel they're weak that way. And as you're moving them and you're pushing and pulling, you can just feel like if you're pushing me this way, you can just feel. But if your hand's here and you push that way, I'll just give a little bit. If I don't do that, or if you're good enough, you might even feel me compensate like that. And that's something when you get more advanced at push hands, you can feel that kind of thing. And Yao Zhongzong talks about this. So you can just feel from of course wrestlers do that like with their whole body. They can feel the way that the other person is, their whole body becomes the point where they can feel the way the other person is moving. But if you're like that and you feel someone's a little bit, you just feel they're off balance, and then you go and you release force. And it's the principle of the power of the technique is relative to the strength or weakness of the target. If they're weak on that axis, if they're strong on that axis, it might do nothing at all. You might have to change to that's good posture actually, somatic bounce into the bench run like that. Keeping it very close range as well and flat footed. So you move them and hit him the uppercut like that. Really useful little technique. Bit harder if you go for the full, because what I was doing originally was that, wasn't it? Not just back like that, but go for that down like that. So then you've got to think, well, how am I going to hit? If I want to hit with this hand, like what's sympathetic to this movement? So it could be straight down like that, but that's right into the hip, so that's not a good idea. But what it is sympathetic for is to just turn up into the uppercut like that, which is also sympathetic in terms of the reality of the context of the fight, because they're near. It's a very specific. It's a very, very specific thing that could happen. I know that. Well, that's someone having their hand on your back of your arm like that. That happens all the time these days, so just changing it like that. And using the somatic bounce to go. You see now in the kind of everything I've been getting at to escalate into today is that as we understand somatic timing, the movements start synthesizing into one movement. Like, which is the kind of thing you see in really good push hands where it's, well, it's not entirely clear what counts as good push hands, is it? Like a lot of push hands is quite divorced from the reality of the context of the fight, but in terms of this idea of the movement flowing into the one release of force flowing into the next, using somatic timing and that becoming a compound Farley to do it really. So 1, 2, and then again the shoulder's got to go under this time. So like with the short power before, it had to rotate up like this. Now it's got to rotate under like that. And I have talked about this idea of using the shoulder like that before. It's got to go 1 and then rotate under, 1, rotate under. And having this articulation and relaxation and ability to use the shoulders. Wonder how to develop that. So 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 1. So it's not like an aesthetic for no reason. It's not like there's a scientific reason for it. We want to go to that target. We can go straight up like that. We want to generate a bit more power, so we want to just get more on the rotation. And that's how we use short power effectively. Some of the stuff that's talked about in terms of short power. Either people think it's just Farley anyway and just say, well, all Farley is short, which isn't true, The Farley movement from the body might be short, but the posture can be big. Or, I don't know. Or people just go like that and hit things and say that's short power. But it's a real thing. It's a real way of compensating for hitting from a shorter range by using the articulation of the shoulder. So we want to get more zing on the punch, so we have to use this short power move. And then getting it into one movement like that, one compound movement. So it's an escalated version of our understanding of somatic timing. Yeah, it's advanced level stuff. But you can practice everything. This is the genius of Yiquan. You can practice everything slow. You can just check it and get in a mirror and check it as well. Don't worry about this idea you shouldn't train in a mirror. You can check your posture in a mirror. Yao Zhong's used to train in front of a mirror. It's really, really useful to train in front of a mirror. There's just certain other points, other times, where you start focusing on the aesthetic rather than the feeling that it becomes problematic. So let's expand that movement into a bigger, with the back pivot route like that. Again, big expansion, big postural expansion, feeds into the movement around the axis. So, like, we can change like this, which is like someone throws a kick and you catch or hit again with the other hand like that. Hit with it's one of the few times we hit with this part of the hand like this. I think you'd be very lucky to catch the kick and do that. Like there's a good move I like for a round kick, like my opponents in the opposing stance, and they kick it. You can release force into there, catch the leg, release force into their thigh. I'm doing it on a video. And my senior student tries to round kick me and I do that. And you can just snap someone's knee doing that if you do it full release force. But this is, we'll do one, let's say we do just a really lucky flow. We hit once and then we manage to really commit to the kick and we move it again, 1, 2, like that. Shouldn't really think about an application anyway, let's just think about the posture itself. It's quite an unlikely thing to make happen, I have to say, but but what it teaches in terms of movement principles is what's important. So, like 1, 2, flow. Because see, now we're going to use our complementary routing to flow into the posture like this. I mean, this happens all the time, I have to say, by the way, like that you catch a kick like that. So it's not really that, it's absolutely not that unbelievable. You catch, particularly if you've got gloves on, you catch a kick like that, like a front kick or something. And if you could just change before the kick drops like that, to hit with the, always doing it that way, to hit with this part of the, hit with that part. To hit, should really hit with this part of the 1, 2, because that's the kick, that's the posture that we do normally if someone's throwing. We go for the deflect with that part of the hand. So 1, 2, look at the 1. Not only is the routing complementary, but the circular movement just flows into the, it's almost like, but it's that. Bit of Young Chun for you there. I don't know Young Chun. Catch it maybe and then just hit him with the 1. So we go from forward to back, and that also adds force into the movement the other way. So we go. So that was definitely chain Farley. It was 1, 2, and we want to compound the movement. And the only way I can compound the movement is to keep this flow of the hands like that. So it's very much a Tai Chi kind of, because if we hit and stop to the lock point, it's just going to be chain Farley, and to compound it, that lock point's got to be hit and flow, just like in Tai Chi. Okay, so there's another aspect of this as well, that when we think about the idea of washing being down, going, it's up, down, open, close. 1, this is down, and then it goes down again with the second movement. So 1, 2, like that, like it spirals down with like the UK economy. 1, 2, 1, 2. Hopefully things will get better. 1, 2. It uses the same principle twice of using the body weight, the gravity, the energy of the Earth's core. I'm sure that's what Wang Shenzhai called it, the energy of the Earth's core, something like that. Meaning gravity, like 1, 2, is one of the forces you can use to generate force. And it sounds a little bit, at first you think, like, what's he getting at? Like, we'll throw someone and they hit the floor or something, and you think, right, it's just, when you understand this idea of open, close, up and down, and it usually is that open, close, up and down rather than forwards and backwards as well, because usually forwards and backwards is just open, close and up or down, but moving forwards or backwards. When you get this, it's like, yeah, it means like you can drop into a posture to generate more, just get a little bit more zing through the use of your sheer body mass. And in this case we do it twice, 1, 2, like that, but we get it on I forget which way I was doing it, this way, wasn't it? Like, we get it on this circular flow like that, to hit him with the front. Hit him this way, hit him that way. It doesn't matter which way. Usually you don't do it that way because you can't get enough distance on it. So if someone's kicked and you've moved it over like that, and you want to hit it with this arm, you'd have to go right over like that to get it. So it is usually this way, like this. 1, 2, you can catch and then hit out this way. You can hit with different parts of the arm. You can even palm it, like hit him with a slap into the thigh, something like that, to change into it just depends what's valid in the moment. And a slap might seem stupid, but like if you can't get the hit any other way, and you're just going to go for the head, and you just slap the leg out to just distract or push the leg over a little bit to go for the hit. Or you can even punch the leg, so you can even punch the leg, or you can punch the knee joint if it's like a serious fight, but it can hurt you, can hurt your hand. I've only ever punched a knee joint by accident, I have to say. It didn't hurt my hand, but it really hurt the other person, so it can be done. So, hit like that one, slap. Change into another, pull back. So there's a variety of things you can do, but it's this 1, 2, moving down twice. I think that's going to have to be it for today, isn't it? Because I wanted to talk about so many different examples, and I wanted to talk about closing and the way that we use structural expansion with closing, how it relates to that. That's going to have to wait for another day, different discussion. But I feel like we recapped and synthesized a load of really useful stuff there that we've looked at, and that if you can bring it all together and use that you can really be on your way to developing some real Yiquan skills. And yeah, without more ado, I hope that was useful. Thanks as ever for watching. I know not many people do watch, not many people are really interested in it. That doesn't matter. What matters is that some people are interested in it, and the thing itself can survive in a world where the stuff that's being discussed is each one. And thanks for being interested and thanks for caring. That's it. One love. Try to nourish everyone's development. Some people have to be told that what they're doing is wrong. Some people's development can't be nourished until they recognise that they're on the wrong path, I have to say. But one love. See you in the next one.